So, my buddy won't shut up about this Falun Gong shit and,
Yeah.
what the actual fuck? Seriously, aliens cloning humans. Come on, what kind of LSD-fueled fever dream is this? But, all right, I gotta admit, I got curious. Went down the rabbit hole, Wikipedia articles, all that. And let
Yeah.
me tell you, this shit is wild.
Yeah, Falun Gong, it's definitely a bit of a head scratcher. It's this new religious movement popped up in China back in the 90s,
Yeah.
and it's got this fascinating mix, traditional spiritual practices and some seriously out there beliefs.
Right. So on one hand, it's all like meditation and be good,
Yeah.
But then they're throwing around stories about aliens and the apocalypse like it's nothing. So where do we even start with this? Let's break it down. What are the basics of Falun Gong besides the whole alien invasion thing, of course?
All right, let's cut the crap about the aliens for now.
Yeah.
The core of Falun Gong, it's really rooted in these three principles, right? Truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. They believe in achieving spiritual enlightenment, but it's not just like, sitting on a mountaintop. It's through cultivating your moral character. They have this term for it, sing sing.
So ditching the greed, the lust, all that nasty shit that makes you an asshat, right? Sounds kind of like Buddhism, but with like a sci-fi twist.
Yeah, there are definitely some parallels with Buddhist and Taoist philosophy, especially when it comes to karma and virtue. But Sing Sing, it's more than just, being a good person. It's about actively cultivating good karma, not just avoiding bad shit. And that plays a major role in their whole worldview.
Okay, but how do they actually go about cultivating this Sing Sing? Do they just like sit around chanting mantras? What's the deal with these weird exercises they do?
Right. So there are these 5 exercises. They're considered central to their practice. And they believe these exercises, they help open up the body's energy channels or meridians, Think of them like pathways for energy flow.
Okay.
But it's important to remember, with all the physical stuff, it's secondary to the moral cultivation aspect.
So it's not just about bending yourself into a pretzel and hoping for superpowers.
Yeah.
Spill the tea on these exercises. I read about this Buddha stretching 1,000 arms thing. And that shit sounds epic. And what in the hell is a felon standing stance?
So the Buddha stretching 1,000 arms, that one's all about, opening up those energy channels, facilitating smooth energy flow throughout your body. It's also associated with, promoting compassion, which ties back to that Buddhist imagery. Galan standing stance. That one involves holding 4 static poses, each kind of like you're holding an invisible wheel for a set amount of time.
Okay.
They say it increases wisdom, strengthens your connection to the cosmos.
So it's like yoga with a dash of cosmic energy. I dig it.
Yeah.
What about the rest of them? Penetrating the cosmic extremes? That sounds like some next level shit, right?
Yeah, each exercise has its own specific purpose. So penetrating the cosmic extremes focuses on getting rid of negative energy and absorbing positive energy. Then you've got the Falun cosmic orbit, which is all about circulating energy throughout the body. And then lastly, the 5th exercise, reinforcing supernatural powers.
Hold up, reinforcing supernatural powers. Are we talking telekinesis and shit? Are they trying to become the next X-Men? And speaking of supernatural, let's talk aliens. Is Li Hongji, their fearless leader, really serious about this whole alien cloning thing? That's got to be some top-tier bullshit, right?
Well, Li Hongji, he's definitely made some wild claims about aliens. I mean, from creating computers and airplanes to, yes, even cloning humans. He said that aliens are trying to, replace us with these cloned versions because they're jealous of our perfect human bodies.
Wait, so we're in some cosmic beauty pageant, and aliens are the bitter runner-ups trying to steal our crowns. That's hilarious. But seriously, how do people buy this shit?
To be fair, his statements on aliens, they've been pretty inconsistent over the years. Some practitioners, they interpret the cloning thing metaphorically.
Metaphorical aliens, huh? But these guys preach truthfulness, right? So how do they reconcile that with their leader spitting out this cosmic conspiracy crap?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more eyebrow-raising aspects of their beliefs, And it does raise some questions about how people make sense of seemingly contradictory ideas within their belief systems.
So on one hand, inner peace and meditation, all that jazz. On the other hand, truth bombs about aliens cloning humans. This shit's a real head spinner. But you know what's even more surprising? The fact that these Zen masters are also like tech savvy as hell.
Right.
It's a wild juxtaposition.
Yeah.
You're telling me. I mean, they created anti-censorship software like FreeGate and UltraSurf to help people in China bypass the Great Firewall. It's like they went from meditating in the mountains to hacking the Matrix. How the hell did that happen?
Well, this seemingly cultish group, they're actually pretty hardcore when it comes to internet freedom. And get this, the U.S. government even funded UltraSurf at one point.
Wait, seriously. The U.S. government threw cash at a group China considers public enemy number one. Talk about playing with fire. What's so special about this ultrasurf thing anyway? Is it like the holy grail of internet freedom or something?
Ultrasurf, it's definitely a powerful tool for getting around internet censorship, which, is a massive issue in China. But it's not without its controversy. For one thing, it's not open source, right? That means no one can independently check for, like, backdoors or vulnerabilities. Right. Who knows what's lurking in the code, right?
Well, the U.S. government might have funded software that's potentially compromised. That's pretty fucked up. What happened with that whole fiasco?
Well, buckle up, because it gets even juicier. A whistleblower claimed that, diverting funds to Ultrasurf. It was part of a criminal conspiracy, orchestrated by a Trump-appointed official. So now you've got, internet freedom, government funding, potential security risks, and accusations of corruption, all swirling around in a big, messy pot.
Okay, so this Falun Gong rabbit hole, it's getting deeper by the minute. We've got aliens, mind control, internet espionage. What the hell else is going on here? Let's talk about China. Why are they so damn pissed off at these people? I mean, they're just a bunch of hippies meditating and talking to their alien buddies, right? What's the big deal?
Well, the Chinese government, they see Falun Gong as a direct challenge to their authority. And for a regime that likes to control everything, a group with millions of followers chanting about truth and compassion, that's a big fucking problem.
Okay, but how many people are we talking about here?
Estimates suggest that up to 70 million people in China were practicing Falun Gong in the 90s.
70 million. Holy shit. Okay, so they freaked out, but they didn't just ban them.
Right.
I mean, we all heard the rumors about some pretty brutal shit going down.
You're right. The Chinese government, they didn't just ban Falun Gong. They launched a full-blown persecution campaign.
Right.
Mass arrests, imprisonment, torture, and even accusations of organ harvesting. We're talking some seriously dark shit here. So welcome back to our deep dive into the bizarre world of Falun Gong. Last time, we were talking about the Chinese government's brutal crackdown on these guys. And I mean brutal. We're talking torture, imprisonment, and even organ harvesting. Seriously fucked up stuff.
Organ harvesting? Hold on. Like, are we talking ripping out people's organs and selling them on the black market? That's some next level evil shit.
Yeah.
But how do we know this is actually happening? It's not just Falun Gong propaganda.
It's definitely a tough one to get concrete evidence for. China's not exactly known for its transparency, especially when it comes to human rights abuses. But there's this, this growing mountain of evidence from various sources that supports the claims of persecution against Falun Gong.
All right, such as?
Well, you've got eyewitness accounts from people who managed to escape China, reports from human rights organizations, the big ones like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and then there are investigations by independent bodies like the China Tribunal.
China Tribunal. Sounds like some kind of kangaroo court. Fill me in.
Not at all. This was, a serious independent investigation, specifically looking into organ harvesting in China. It was actually led by Sir Geoffrey Nice, a British lawyer. He's kind of a big deal in the international law world. He was the lead prosecutor in the trial of Slobodan Milosevic.
Yeah, the butcher of the Balkans. Not exactly a guy you want on your Christmas card list. So this tribunal, it had some serious legal firepower behind it. What exactly did they find?
Their findings were, well, pretty damning. They heard from tons of witnesses, including medical experts, former detainees. They examined mountains of evidence, and they concluded that there's, clear and convincing evidence that forced organ harvesting has been going on in China for years.
And Falun Gong practitioners.
They're right at the top of the list when it comes to victims.
So it's not just Falun Gong crying wolf. This is real, verified shit going down in China. It's like something out of a horror movie.
Yeah.
But let's get specific. How does this persecution actually play out? I mean, day to day, what happens to these people besides the whole organ harvesting nightmare?
It's not a pretty picture. Practitioners, they can be arrested and detained for the smallest things, like having Falun Gong materials or even talking about their beliefs.
Seriously?
They get thrown into these re-education through labor camps, which are basically just prisons with a fancy name. They face harsh conditions, forced labor, and, torture. And in the worst cases, they disappear completely, ending up on an operating table somewhere, their organs harvested for profit.
It's fucking insane. This is happening in the 21st century. All because they want to meditate, be kind to others, and talk to their imaginary alien friends. But hold on. This persecution has been going on for decades now, right? And since the late 90s. Hasn't it calmed down at all?
Sadly, no. It hasn't calmed down at all. And there's even, Evidence suggesting that it's actually getting worse, especially under Xi Jinping. He's been cracking down on religious freedom hard, and Falun Gong is one of the groups that's been hit the hardest.
So it's actually escalating. What the fuck is wrong with these people? Don't they have bigger fish to fry?
The Chinese government, they see any group that operates outside their control as a threat, and they're using all the tools in their authoritarian toolbox to crush them. From facial recognition technology to AI-powered surveillance to a vast network of informants. It's like something out of a dystopian sci-fi novel.
Big Brother's watching, huh? And he's got a scalpel in his hand. Okay, so we've painted a pretty bleak picture here, but what can we, the non-alien believing, non-organ harvesting folks, do about this? I mean, we're just two guys having a chat. Does it even matter?
It does matter. The first step is, raising awareness, shining a light on this darkness. The more people know about what's happening, the more pressure we can put on governments and international organizations to actually do something about it.
Okay, so what can people actually do?
Supporting human rights groups is a good start, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, they're on the front lines documenting these abuses, fighting for justice. And we can't forget about, the power of the individual voice. Speak up, donate, write to your representatives, call out bullshit when you see it. It all adds up.
Okay, so awareness, activism, and not being a bystander. Got it. But let's talk about the human side of this story. We've talked a lot about the beliefs and the persecution, but who are these Falun Gong practitioners? What are their lives actually like?
It's easy to get lost in the politics and the headlines, but we can't forget that this is ultimately about real people, people with families, hopes, and dreams. Falun Gong practitioners, they come from all walks of life. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, students, retirees.
And the regular folks.
Just regular folks who found something in Falun Gong that resonated with them.
So what's their story? What drew them to this whole thing in the first place?
Well, many of them. They found Falun Gong back in the 90s when China was going through some major changes. They were looking for, meaning, purpose, maybe even a way to improve their health. Falun Gong offered them, a sense of community, a spiritual path, a set of values to live by.
And then the government decided to turn their lives into a living hell.
Exactly. They went from being ordinary citizens to being branded enemies of the state. They were forced to choose between their beliefs and their safety, their families and their freedom. And many of them lost everything. Their jobs, their homes, their loved ones. Some have been imprisoned, tortured, killed. It's a tragedy of epic proportions.
So how do they cope with this shit? How do you keep going when you're facing that kind of persecution, that kind of loss?
Well, their faith is a huge part of it. They believe that they're fighting for something bigger than themselves, for truth and justice. They also draw strength from their community, from other practitioners who understand what they're going through. It's a shared struggle, a shared sense of purpose.
So it's not just about meditation and aliens. It's about resistance, about community, about finding something to hold on to in the darkest of times.
Yeah.
But let's be real, the alien thing is still a major head scratcher. Do they all still believe in that?
The belief in aliens and other unconventional ideas, it's definitely one of the more controversial aspects of Falun Gong, and it's something that the Chinese government has exploited to discredit them, to paint them as this dangerous cult.
Yeah, I can see how that plays into the whole brainwashing narrative. But is it really fair to judge an entire group based on some of their more, shall we say, out there beliefs?
It's a complex issue. Beliefs are personal and they can evolve over time. What might seem strange to one person can be deeply meaningful to another. We shouldn't, dismiss or ridicule people's beliefs just because we don't understand them or agree with them.
Fair enough. But how do Falun Gong practitioners themselves reconcile these beliefs with the rest of their lives? I mean, how do you go about your day thinking that aliens are trying to clone you?
That's a question anthropologists and sociologists have been trying to unpack for a long time. And the answer, like most things in life, is complicated. Some practitioners, they may compartmentalize their beliefs, keeping their spiritual and secular lives separate. Others might integrate those beliefs into everything they do, seeing the world through a very different lens. And still others might struggle with, doubts and questions, trying to make sense of it all.
So there's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to belief. It's a personal journey, a process of exploration and discovery. Makes sense. But let's switch gears for a minute. We talked about the Chinese government's propaganda machine and how they've demonized Falun Gong. But these guys aren't exactly slouches when it comes to media, right? I mean, we mentioned the Epoch Times before. That's their baby, right?
That's right. The Epoch Times. It's a media outlet with strong ties to Falun Gong. It started as a, Chinese language newspaper, but now they've got versions in English and other languages and a big online presence. But it's also unfortunately become known for its far-right leanings and for pushing some pretty wild conspiracy theories.
Hold up. So they're fighting against censorship in China, but they're also spreading disinformation in the West. That's some seriously hypocritical bullshit.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on with that?
It's a confusing and a problematic development, to say the least. The Epoch Times, it started as a way to, counter Chinese propaganda and expose the persecution of Falun Gong, but somewhere along the line, they went down this rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and right-wing extremism.
So they went from being victims of propaganda to becoming propagandists themselves. Talk about a twisted turn of events.
It's a stark reminder that, good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes, and it highlights the slippery slope of disinformation, how easy it is to fall prey to it, and how damaging it can be.
Yeah, the irony here is thick enough to cut with a knife. You've got this group that's been brutally silenced and censored by an authoritarian regime.
Yeah.
And then they turn around and start spreading their own brand of bullshit. It's mind-boggling.
It's a classic case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend gone wrong. The Epoch Times, they found this audience among those who are, distrustful of mainstream media, susceptible to conspiracy theories, and they've been very successful at exploiting those fears and anxieties.
So they're basically preying on vulnerable people. That's pretty messed up.
It's a cynical strategy, but it's been incredibly effective. They've built a loyal following and gained a lot of influence, especially in right-wing circles.
And all of this while still claiming to be all about truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. Give me a break.
It's a major contradiction, and it's something that a lot of people struggle to reconcile. How can a group that preaches these high moral values also promote such harmful and divisive content?
It's a head-scratcher for sure. But it's a good reminder that we need to be critical of all sources of information, regardless of who's behind them. We can't just blindly accept what we read or hear, especially in this age of social media and online echo chambers. We need to fact-check, cross-reference, and be willing to challenge our own biases.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is more important than ever in this information-saturated world. We can't just, outsource our thinking to algorithms or echo chambers. We have to engage our brains, question what we see and hear, and seek out multiple perspectives.
Okay, so we've covered the good, the bad, and the ugly of Falun Gong. They're victims, they're advocates, they're propagandists, they're tech wizards, they're conspiracy theorists. It's a real mixed bag.
It's a complex and often contradictory story, and it raises a lot of difficult questions about the nature of belief, the role of media, and the fight for human rights in a, rapidly changing world.
Yeah, this deep dive has been a real trip. I started out thinking this was just about some wacky space stuff, but it's turned out to be so much more than that.
It's a reminder that the world is full of gray areas, and even the most seemingly bizarre beliefs can have real-world consequences.
All right, folks. That's it for part 2 of our deep dive into the world of Falun Gong. We'll be back for the final part, where we'll tackle their relationship with the West and try to wrap our heads around this whole crazy story. All right, so welcome back to the final leg of our Falun Gong odyssey. We've talked about their beliefs, the shitstorm they're facing in China, their forays into the media and tech world. But there's one more piece of this puzzle we got to figure out. Their relationship with the West. It's a bit of a head-scratcher, isn't it?
It really is. On one hand, you've got, Western governments, human rights groups condemning China's treatment of Falun Gong, and rightly so. I mean, it's
right.
A fucking atrocity.
Right.
But then on the other hand, there's this weird hesitancy to, fully embrace them. It's like they're this awkward guests at a dinner party, and no one knows quite what to do with them.
Yeah, it's like there's this, unspoken asterisk next to their name. This lingering sense of, they're being persecuted, but so let's just rip the Band-Aid off and talk about, the big fat elephant in the room, the whole cult label. China's been shouting that from the rooftops for years. And let's be real, that shit's hard to shake off.
It absolutely is. And the Chinese government, they've been incredibly successful at, weaponizing that term. They've painted this picture of Falun Gong as this, dangerous, fanatical group that brainwashes its followers, threatens the very fabric of society. It's classic propaganda straight out of the authoritarian playbook.
So is the West buying it? Are we falling for this evil cult bullshit?
Not entirely. Most people in the West, they're pretty skeptical of anything coming out of, China's propaganda machine. But there's also a general distrust of groups that are seen as kind of, cultish, especially ones with beliefs that are, shall we say, A bit unconventional. And let's be honest, some of Falun Gong's teachings, like the whole alien cloning thing, it can seem pretty batshit crazy to a Western audience.
Yeah, even for a guy like me who's, open to all sorts of weird shit, the alien thing, it's a tough one to swallow. But is that really the main reason for the lack of support?
It's definitely a factor, but
Hmm.
there's more to it than that. Falun Gong's, their conservative social views, their stance on things like homosexuality and feminism, that's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, particularly in the West.
Right.
And then there's the Epoch Times, their media arm, which has, gone full-on conspiracy theory and right-wing extremism. That's definitely not winning them any fans on the left.
So they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot here.
Yeah.
Alienating the very people who could be their biggest allies.
It's a classic PR disaster. They're so focused on, exposing China's abuses.
Yeah.
Pushing their own ideology, that they're failing to connect with a broader audience, preaching to the choir, but not winning over any new converts.
And the irony is, they're actually fighting for some pretty fundamental values that, most Westerners would agree with. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, human rights. Those are pretty universal, right?
Absolutely. But their message is getting lost in the noise, drowned out by the, alien talk, the conspiracy theories, and the conservative social agenda.
So what's the solution here? How do they bridge this gap and gain some real traction in the West?
They need a serious PR makeover, I think. They need to tone down the crazy talk, dial back the right-wing rhetoric, and focus on that universal human rights message. They need to, build bridges, not walls, find common ground with those who share their values, even if they don't agree on everything.
Ditch the aliens, focus on the human rights, and play nice with the liberals.
But
can they pull that off? I mean, these guys are known for their stubbornness. They've been persecuted, demonized, ostracized. They're not exactly the compromising type.
It's a tough ask, no doubt about it. But if they want to win over hearts and minds in the West, they need to broaden their appeal, move beyond the echo chamber, engage with the wider world, warts and all.
All right, so let's wrap this shit up. We've gone deep into the belly of the beast, explored some dark corners, wrestled with some seriously mind-bending ideas. What's the takeaway here? What have we learned from this wild ride?
I think we've learned that Falun Gong, it's a complicated beast. They're victims of horrific persecution, but they've also become agents of disinformation. They're fighting for noble causes, but they're also alienating potential allies with their bizarre beliefs and their aggressive tactics. Their story is a cautionary tale, I think, about the dangers of authoritarianism, the seductive power of conspiracy theories, and the importance of, critical thinking in a world that's overflowing with information, both good and bad.
Yeah, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I came in thinking this was all, aliens and spaceships, but it's so much more than that. It's about power, belief, manipulation, and the struggle for human dignity in a world that can often feel like it's spinning off its axis.
It's a reminder that the world, it's full of complexities and contradictions, and there are rarely easy answers. And it challenges us to look beyond the surface, engage with different perspectives, and to never stop questioning the narratives that we're being fed.
Well said. All right, folks, that's it for our deep dive into the world of Falun Gong. It's been a hell of a ride, and I hope it's left you with some food for thought. Keep questioning, keep learning, keep your bullshit detectors on high alert. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.